Hi everyone, welcome to week 3 of our Data Exchange webinar series. In today's webinar, we're going to talk about setting up your organization in the Data Exchange and creating outlets. As always, there are 3 key things we will discuss. I'll talk about how to set up your organization in the Data Exchange, some of the key things you need to do before you can start reporting, and we'll also talk about outlets, what they are, why they're important, and how we create them. Before we begin, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about why we're all using the Data Exchange and collecting and reporting information about the services we deliver and the clients we work with. Using the Data Exchange will help us clearly understand who our clients are. We'll be able to track our client's journey through the service system, and we can also use the data we report to demonstrate the impacts of our services on client and community outcomes. Our ultimate goal is to have a high quality data set that clearly tells us who our clients are, what services they receive, and what their needs are. So we can then use that information to make sure the right people get the right support at the right time. The data we report into the Data Exchange is really going to help us understand what works for our clients and what we can do better to help them achieve the outcomes that they want to achieve. So in our previous webinar, I introduced this document to everybody, the Data Exchange Quick Start Guide. So this is a 5-page document that outlines the 11 key steps you need to follow to access and start using the Data Exchange. It includes links to all the key resources you need to action each step. And in each of our webinars, I've been taking everyone through each step in this document. So in our first week, we looked at steps 1 and 2 about where to find key resources. Last week, we talked through steps 3 and 4 about MyGovID, linking RAM, and accessing the Data Exchange. And in today's webinar, we are going to cover steps 5 and 6. So step 5 takes you through what you need to do to set your organization up in the Data Exchange. This includes checking your program activities, opting into the partnerships approach, and picking an upload method. So how you're going to actually enter your data. And then step 6 is about creating and managing your outlets. So we're going to start with step 5, setting up your organization. When you log into the Data Exchange, the first thing you'll see is that screenshot on the right-hand side of the PowerPoint. This is your Dex Dashboard. So all of the tasks we're going to discuss today can be completed by going to the My Organization section on your dashboard. Here is where you can review your program activities, upload files, opt into the partnerships approach, create outlets, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But you can only complete these tasks if you are an organization administrator. So we talked about this briefly in our last webinar. An organization administrator is the first person in your organization to access the Data Exchange. They will most likely be the person who has or who will give you access to Dex. So if you're not an organization administrator, you won't be able to complete the tasks we go through today. You will either have to get your organization administrator to do it for you, or you can ask them to make you an organization administrator as well, so you have the same access they do. So if we look at the My Organization section in the red box on the screen, the first line of text that you can see says Manage Organization. So when we click Manage Organization, you will be taken to a screen that looks like this. So as you can see, there are lots of things to do here. You can edit your organization's details, create outlets, which I'll talk about in a lot more detail later, and you can also view your program activities. So one of the first things you need to do when you get access to the Data Exchange is to check your program activities. You need to make sure the program activities you have in Dex, so the ones you'll see here at number 6, are the same as what is in your contract. They need to match exactly. So if the program activities you see here don't match the program activities in your contract, you need to get in contact with your DCJ contract manager and then we can update the program activities for you. It's really important to check these because you need to make sure you report information under the correct program activities. And you obviously can't do that if they're not right to begin with. So once you've checked your program activities, the next thing you need to do is to opt into the partnerships approach. So to do this, you click the Edit Organization Details button, number 1 on the screen. And when you do that, you'll be taken to a screen that looks like this. So all you need to do to opt into the partnerships approach is to tick yes, partnerships approach agreement. Super important to remember that it is compulsory to opt into the partnerships approach in the TEI program. So this means that everybody has to do it. For those of you who don't know what the partnerships approach is, it's basically an agreement between the TEI program and DSS that says we agree to report certain pieces of information like client referrals and outcomes data, so score and community score. And in exchange for reporting that information, we get access to additional reports. That's it. And all you need to do is tick that yes button. It takes all of 2 seconds. If you want, instead of opting in your whole organization, you can just sign up individual program activities. So I haven't got it on the slide, but in this document, the task card, Update Participation in the Partnerships Approach, it shows you step-by-step instructions to do that. Signing up individual program activities is only really going to be relevant to organizations who use the data exchange to report to other funding bodies, like DSS, for example. If you only use the data exchange for the TEI program, then don't worry about that. You can just click yes, like what's on the screen. So once you've checked your program activities and you've opted into the partnerships approach, now you need to decide how you are going to enter or upload your data into the data exchange. So there are 3 different methods you can use. You can conduct a bulk upload, so you can upload a spreadsheet with all of your data in it, or you can conduct a system-to-system transfer. So this is where you already have a client management system that you use, and you can set your system up so it talks to Dex. Or the third option, you can manually enter your data via the web-based portal. If you choose options 1 or 2, there is some work you will need to do to make sure that the files you upload or the transfers you complete meet certain technical specifications. There are 2 documents on the screen, the web service technical specifications and the bulk file upload technical specifications, that provide more information about this. You can also take a look at the upload methods document, the 3rd dot point on the screen. This discusses those 2 options in more detail. So if you want to find out more about them, you can read that document. It's important for you to know as well that if you choose method 1 or 2, DCJ unfortunately cannot provide technical assistance to you. This is because we're not IT specialists. We won't be across all of the data management platforms that all of our 550 service providers use. And we're not across the technical specifications that organizations need to adhere to. So you will have to contact the data exchange if you need more support to do this. And you should also reach out to your own IT specialist to help you too. For those of you who are going with option 3 to manually enter data, there are lots of task cards and learning modules available on the Data Exchange website. I showed everyone how to access these in our first webinar, and in each of our upcoming webinars, we'll be quite focused on this method of data entry. So you can use these webinars to help you navigate and understand how to use the platform as well. So once you have decided on an upload method, the next thing you need to do is create your outlets. So in the data exchange, an outlet is the location where a service is delivered or where staff have traveled from to deliver a service. So when you create your outlets, you need to know the street address for the space or the building you work in. The data exchange system will use that address to map the location of your service. It will identify the local government area and the DCJ district that you work in. In the image of this slide, this is actually a map of all of the outlets that have been created in the data exchange for the TEI program so far. So those orange dots are the actual physical locations our services are delivered in. So to create your outlets, you need to go to the My Organization section. Sorry guys, the slides are stuffing up. Okay, we got there eventually. So to create your slides, you need to go to the My Organization section on your Dex Dashboard and select Manage Organization. You will then be taken to this screen that I showed you earlier. So you can see at number 3, there is a section for you to add your outlets. Once you've created outlets, you'll be able to see them in that list there, and you can use those search functions to search for a specific outlet. For those of you who have never created an outlet before, this area will be blank until you've got at least 1 or 2 in there. So it is very important to remember that only organization administrators can create outlets. If you are not an organization administrator, you actually won't even be able to see this button. So if that button isn't there, you need to find the organization administrator in your service and have them make the outlets for you. For those of you who are organization administrators, you can hit that outlet button and you'll be taken to a screen that looks like this. So here is where you add in the information about your outlet. So you need to give your outlet a name. This can be anything you want it to be, but remember that your contract manager from DCJ will be able to see the names of your outlets in the data exchange reports. So try to make it something that they will be able to easily understand. And then you just need to enter the address for the space or the building you worked in. Once all of that information is complete, you can hit the Save button. And then you will be able to see the outlet in your list of outlets here. But you are not done yet. Everybody gets tripped up on this. Before you can use your outlets, you need to assign program activities to them. To do this, you just need to select an outlet from the list, and you'll be taken to a screen that looks like this on the left-hand side with the outlet details. So you'll be able to see the name of the outlet and the address, and then you can see a list of activities delivered from that outlet. So what you need to do is hit the Add Activity button, and then you'll see a screen that looks like this on the right-hand side. So there is a drop-down menu of the program activities that your organization has. You need to pick the program activities that will be delivered at that outlet and then click Save. You will need to do this individually for every program activity that will be delivered from the outlet. So if there are 3 program activities being delivered from your community center, you need to add all 3 program activities to the outlet for your center. And once you've done that, they'll appear in this list down the bottom in the outlet details. Okay, so once you've added your activities, they need to be approved by DSS. This is an automatic process. You don't need to do anything. You can see in the little status column here, the first outlet says ready for approval. This means it has been sent to DSS and you're waiting for DSS to approve it. It can take up to 10 days for that to happen. So when you're creating your outlets, please don't leave it to the last minute of a reporting period. Try to make sure that you've given yourself enough time to make sure that they can still be approved in time and you can still upload all of the data that you need. Once they are approved, that status will change to approved and then you can use them immediately. It's also important to remember that if your program activities ever change, so say, for example, you have a program activity added to your contract, you need to remember that you won't be able to use it until it's been assigned to an outlet and approved by DSS. So if your program activities are ever updated, you need to go back to your outlets in the data exchange and make sure you assign the new program activity to an outlet before you can use it. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. This document, there's a hyperlink in the top right corner that says create and manage outlets. That document takes you through the whole process that I just outlined, and it does it in a lot more detail than what I just did as well. So if you ever need any help, please make sure you check that out, because it'll hopefully have all of the answers that you need. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about some of the rules that you need to follow for setting up your outlets. So over the last few months, we've received a lot of questions from people about how many outlets they need, what to do if a service is delivered in a client's home, how do they differentiate between contracts because they have multiple contracts, how do they delete an outlet, all the fun stuff. So to help everyone navigate these situations and to answer those questions, we've developed a resource called Setting Up Outlets in the Data Exchange. This includes as many FAQs that we could think of. I'm going to go through some of them now, but please download this document and read it before you create your outlets to make sure that you've done it correctly. So the first question I want to tackle is, how many outlets do you need to create? There is an answer to this, unfortunately. It is going to depend on where you deliver your services and what type of services you deliver. However, we have come up with some rules and guidance to help everyone figure this out based on their organization's unique context. So I'm going to go through some of the most common scenarios and some concrete examples that will hopefully help you figure out what your organization needs to do. So the first scenario is the easiest one: services that are always delivered in the same location. So if your service is held in the same location every time, you only need one outlet. An example of this, might be an organization who runs weekly computer skills workshops at the local library. The workshops are at the same library every week, so they just create one outlet for the library. Another example might be a community centre that provides info and advice for local community members. This service is provided face-to-face to people who walk into the centre or over the phone, but it's always provided from the community centre's building, so they create an outlet for the community centre. Another common scenario is for mobile services. So a service is considered mobile if the location of service delivery frequently changes. So this could be activities such as home visiting, food delivery, school excursions. You might run numerous information sessions across your entire district. If you provide a mobile service like that, the outlet should be your nearest office building. So, for example, a community centre runs a weekly playgroup for first-time parents. The location of the playgroup changes each week. So they often meet in different local parks, at the public library, the community centre. The outlet they create for this activity is going to be the location of the community centre. This is because it is the nearest office building where staff are located. Another example could be a service who conducts school excursions with local school children. So each fortnight, they take a group of students to a different location, a park, a library, a museum. So the outlet they create is the location of the school. This is because it's where the group is traveling from. Another example could be an organization who provides intensive family therapy to many different families. So the therapy is provided in families' homes. So the outlet they would create for this activity is the location of the organization's nearest office building. This is because an outlet should never be a client's home. Another common scenario is when the same activity is delivered in different locations. So say, for example, your organization delivers weekly language workshops in 3 different local schools. You would create 3 outlets, one for each school. Another example might be you run parenting education workshops in 10 different community centres throughout the year. So you would have to create 10 different outlets, one for each community centre. This is because your outlets need to accurately reflect where your services are delivered. So whenever you deliver a service in a different location, you should create an outlet for that location. Another common scenario is one-off occasions of service. So this might be a community event, for example. The outlet should reflect the location of service delivery. So you could create a new outlet if the event is held in a new space you've never used before, or you could use one of your existing outlets if the event is held in or near your community centre, for example. Another common scenario is for activities that are hosted online or over the phone. In these situations, the outlet should be the office building that staff work from. We know that many organizations have changed how they deliver services due to COVID-19. So if you're now delivering services online, your outlet should be the office building staff are working in. Or if staff are working from home, it would be the office building that staff would usually work in. So for example, your organization might provide counseling sessions over the phone. The outlet you would use would be the office building you would normally work in. I know there are lots of other scenarios that we could go through, but unfortunately we can't address everything. Please take a look at this document, Setting Up Outlets in the Data Exchange resource, and try to use the information that's in there to help you figure out how many outlets your organization needs. And of course, if you need any help doing this, you can always email TEI at facts.newsouthwales.gov.au. Another common issue that I want to talk about is for those organizations who have multiple contracts for the TEI program. So I know this doesn't apply to everyone, but I want to talk about it anyway because it's really important for those orgs with multiple contracts to get this right. So in the data exchange, DSS use organization names and ABNs to set services up in the data exchange. You're not set up by contract. So this means we need to use outlets to help us differentiate between those contracts. So you can see on the slide, we've got an example there for you. This organization has two separate contracts, one for the Geelong Playgroup and another for the Moorabool Playgroup. So they need to make sure they have two outlets to separate the data that is collected for Geelong and the data that is collected for Moorabool. So you can see they've set up an outlet for each playgroup, and the address is different because they're in separate locations. So even if they only had one contract, they'd probably have two outlets anyway. This next example I want to show you is slightly more complicated. So in this example, we have a service called Warragul Family Support Service, and they have 3 contracts, all for different program activities. So they've got one contract for community connections and community centres. They've got another contract for community centres again, and then they've got another contract for targeted support. So what we need this organisation to do is they need to, first of all, set up their outlets so they reflect where services are actually delivered. Then they also need to set up their outlets to help us differentiate between the contracts. So for community connections in their first contract, let's say they've been contracted to deliver a couple of community events. So they've set up an outlet for the park that they use. And you can see they've called it Civic Park. And that obviously is the address of the park. For the community centres program activity, they set up an outlet for the actual community centre because that's where they provide information and advice, and they run some group workshops and classes for the community. And then for their second contract, the Warragul Drop-In Centre, this is for their youth drop-in centre. So they have a breakfast club, some after-school activities, computers kids can use, and a basketball court. Now, this drop-in centre is actually the same physical location as their community centre. It's the same building, but it's in separate contracts because they wanted to have one contract for young people and then another contract for other groups in the community. So because they have 2 separate contracts, we need them to set up a separate outlet to help us separate the data they report. So you can see here they've created an outlet called Warragul Drop-In Centre, and it's got the same address as the community centre because it's in the same building. But having these 2 separate outlets means that when we go to look at their data, we can select the WFSS community centre and know that the information we're looking at is for this contract. And then we could also select the Warragul Drop-In Centre and know that the information we're looking at is for this contract. So we can really clearly separate them. And then the last contract is super simple. So they're just contracted to deliver a playgroup. It's in a different location anyway, as you can see by the address. So they've created another outlet for that as well. All of this information, again, is in this document, Setting Up Outlets in the Data Exchange. So again, please make sure you take a look at that before creating your outlets. just to make sure you're across everything that you need to know before you start entering information into the data exchange. Before we finish up, I just want to spend some time showing you why it is really important to create accurate outlets. So over the last 12 months, we've seen lots of organizations try to shortcut this. Some people have just set up one outlet for everything, even though they work in 5 different locations. Some people have changed locations, but they haven't updated their outlets. So I just want to take some time to talk about why it's important to do this properly. So I showed this map earlier in the webinar. So again, the orange dots represent the outlets that have been created so far. And we can use this information to look at the services that are delivered in those outlets and if they meet the needs of local communities. We can also look at how far clients need to travel to participate in services, or how far staff need to travel to deliver services. And we can use all this information to better plan our services, to make it easier for clients to access and participate in them. So if your outlets aren't set up accurately, it's really going to impact our ability and your ability to use this data to do that. A really great example of how this information has been used in the past is back in 2017, when Tropical Cyclone Debbie hit in New South Wales and Queensland. The data exchange actually provided information to emergency management and relief services about service providers and where their offices were located in the affected areas. And they used information to figure out if more services were needed, what services were impacted by the cyclone themselves, what capacity those organizations had to support their communities, and all that sort of stuff. So there are some incredible things we can do with this information. We just need to make sure that we've set it up properly on our end, so we can use our data to do that when the time comes. So I know some of the stuff I've talked about today can be a bit confusing, especially if you deliver lots of different activities in lots of different spaces. So please, if you need any help figuring out how many outlets to set up and what outlets you should have for what contract, please speak to your contract manager, or you can email TEI and we can help you figure that out. As always, here are all the key resources we looked at today. So on the left are the key documents you need to set your organization up. And on the right are the 2 documents you can use to help set up and create your outlets. And as always, here are all the places you can go for help if needed. Thanks, everyone.